what is the theory of constraints, and why should I or the audience care?
Well, as we were talking about earlier, I was so taken by surprise when you asked me to talk about theory of constraints, because a lot of people don't, as we said, a lot of people don't even know what it is. A number of years ago, an Israeli physicist named Eli Goldratt came up with this theory that he pushed, and then he became a consultant in different businesses, production lines, and so on. And the theory is actually very simple, and it has to do with the fact that any process, whether it is making cars, making widgets, giving a service, or in our case, medicine, any medical process, the process of a clinic, the process of an emergency department, the process of a hospital admissions, any process has one or more constraints. And by constraints is meant the element that dictates and controls, if you will, the rate of throughput of that process. And by manipulating that constraint, it is possible to increase the throughput of the process and optimize it. And without recognizing the constraints, what happens is what people used to do before theory of constraints became available or known is to try to optimize every component of the process. And in doing that, everybody thinks everything is working real well. I'm doing very well here, very well there. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really improve the process. For example, imagine an emergency department and a process of specific diagnosis of a patient or group of patients that have a specific diagnosis that have to go through, let's make it simple, triage, step number 1, the emergency physician seeing the patient, step number 2, a CT scan, step number 3, and then a decision to either admit or discharge the patient. So 4 steps, 4 simple steps. And what happens is that, let's say that the triage is capable of seeing 15 patients per hour. The physician is capable of seeing 20 patients per hour. What do we think the output and the throughput of that process is going to be? Well, let's say that instead of 15 and 20, the CT scanner can only process 10 patients per hour. So no matter how many patients the physician sees, how many patients are seen in triage, the throughput of that process is going to be 10 patients per hour, no matter what. So unless we recognize that the constraint for the throughput of that process is the CT scanner, and we improve that either by getting a faster CT scanner or a second CT scanner that we can then process 20 patients per hour, then we're not going to improve the process. And what's going to happen is that there's going to be a bottleneck. And this constraint, which is also known as a bottleneck, patients are going to accumulate waiting to get the CT scan done. And that only gets worse hour by hour, if you think about it, because all of a sudden, the excess that is of patients that are coming into the scanner that cannot be processed begins to accumulate. And that happens in every single process across any industry, rather.